Hello everybody, John Felt here. Welcome to the NCGA FMC Ag Weather Outlook for August 15th, 2015. Now last week, some areas did receive some rainfall. The number of rain days that exceeded 3 are indicated in green. Eastern Corn Belt was generally quiet and continued a trend of below normal precipitation and drying out of soils. That pattern that I discussed about a month ago, sort of gradually shifting to the west, has occurred. So now we get most of our days above normal now over the middle part of the Corn Belt and even some of the western sections. Now, if we want to look at how much precipitation fell last week, really this pocket in Iowa with over 2 inches of rain there is indicated in yellow is really the area that received the most. There's really a very small area over southwest Iowa that even received higher, closer to 5 inches. A couple areas in the eastern Corn Belt received some rainfall, about a ½ inch or so, so very light and scattered. But really, with the exception of that area in Iowa, everywhere else was fairly quiet, and that's sort of what I mentioned last week, that it'd be a quiet week with the exception of that real small area. Now, if we look at the departure from normal, we see that right there in that pocket of heavier precipitation in Iowa, we had 2 inches or more above normal in some real small areas. That very small confined area of the southwest corner of the state, 4 inches or more, but that's really localized. But we do see some areas of yellow, and that's saying a deficit of precipitation over the last week of 1 inch or so in a few spots. But overall, you don't see any really widespread blue or purple. You don't see any all that widespread deep shades of yellow or any red. So that's indicating that precipitation was generally fairly close to normal over the last week. Now, temperatures remained in this pattern of either a little bit above or a little bit below normal. Eastern Corn Belt trending a little bit below normal, Western Corn Belt, Upper Midwest a little bit above normal, and the above normal temperatures are indicated in yellow and areas of orange, and the below normal from parts of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio in shades of green. Now, if we look at the soil moisture percentiles, we're beginning to see some white areas over Illinois and Indiana, and that's indicating that soils continue to dry, but we still see pockets of green. So that's a season-long trend, that June and July precipitation. It's going to take a while to get out of that. But we do see the more recent trend over northern Missouri and Iowa, very wet soils over a small area. And I really think it's going to be more localized precipitation as we get through the rest of the month. So keep an eye there on that region right there. But overall, I see a lot of white. I see a little bit of green. So overall, from a whole Corn Belt perspective, Midwest, we're in pretty good shape. Now, the Southeast U.S., I know I have some growers in the Southeast. That area is actually getting quite dry, and that trend will continue. So I'll talk about that a little bit as well. But overall, most conditions are pretty good, acceptable, maybe slightly wet in a few spots, but that one exception there in blue is the area that's quite wet. Now, in August and September, we have some of our quietest weather. The jet stream is usually not all that energized. There's not a lot of action going on. If we don't get tropical weather, it can be quite quiet as we lead into the harvest season, which is the quiet time of the year. So you don't see a whole lot of shading here, brown or blue, and that's indicating the jet stream is relatively close to where it would normally be this week. Now, there's going to be some pockets of energy embedded in this jet stream. Here's one right here. Here's another one right here, and another one right here. And that's going to be a repeated area of energy going over one small area. So I think we're looking at another week of wet weather, but confined in a fairly small area. And I'll talk about that in just a bit. So here are temperatures this week. We're going to have a reinforcement of some cooler air, and that's going to be sort of the pattern. I do think there will be some areas above normal, but we're going to have some cooler air pushing in. And look at the high temperatures as of Wednesday. Temperatures below normal over most of the Midwest. Very pleasant weather for August, and it looks like even high temperatures even in the 60s as we get towards the mid and latter part of the week over the far upper Midwest and parts of the Great Lakes. 70s widespread elsewhere. But that hot weather is really confined, and you know how it is. In August, we can really get a lot of that covering the area, some scorching temperatures, and I just don't see that right through the rest of the growing season. Now, as we get into the August 25th through 30th, the end of August, again, a fairly normal jet stream, a fairly inactive jet stream, so fairly quiet weather, and precipitation that does occur will be more localized, a little bit hard to see where that will specifically be this far out. But temperatures, again, no sign of that hot weather. It looks like temperatures will be a little bit below normal right through the rest of the month. That's most areas. Now here's your precipitation forecast, and like I said, with that pocket of energy moving across and a number of frontal boundaries associated with that, looks like a narrow band of very heavy rain right in this region here. This isn't an overlap with the wettest area that I showed you, the soil moisture, which is down in here, but so it looks like this region here can take this extra rain right in here. It's hard to say if this 3.8 inches will be right here or somewhere else, but it does look like a fairly narrow band of heavy rain in this region. Looks like there could be some rain in the southeast U.S., but it's going to be quite scattered, but at least the possibility of some rain over the next 7 days. Now in the eastern Corn Belt, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, looks like another fairly quiet period, another 7 days. And I mentioned a while back that it looked like that wet pattern had broken, and that still looks to be the case with everything shifting to the west. Now remember, for many, many weeks through the middle of the summer, I was talking about this pattern shifting from the eastern Corn Belt into the central. Well, that's what has occurred. Models were quite accurate with that, and that is what has set up for the latter part of July and now into August. So models have been doing pretty good with that, and that does say that quieter in the eastern Corn Belt, and if there is going to be some action, it's going to be right there in the central part of the nation. So soil moisture changes. We're going to continue to see decreasing soil moisture, drying soils from Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan. And then we're going to have soils getting wetter in that area as indicated in blue. Okay, so let's go through the next 4 weeks as far as precipitation anomalies. Looks like I talked about this week, sort of right here in the center of the nation is the hot spot as far as precipitation. Week 2, very little change. Look at that, it's almost the same area. Relatively quiet, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and then perhaps right in this axis. And I can't say exactly where that's going to be, but let's just put it right here. That looks like going to be week 2, sort of the action spot. Week 3, look at this. And this is something we're going to have to watch. We could be, if we have 3 weeks right in this region here, we could be talking about fairly wet soils over parts of Nebraska, northwest Iowa, southeast Minnesota, and parts of Wisconsin. So let's keep an eye on that because that's 3 weeks in a row. Note how dry it looks like over parts of the southeast U.S. And then week 4. So almost a repeat. It looks like a very stagnant type pattern, very persistent type pattern. So continued below normal temperatures. They're going to range from a bit below normal to noticeably below normal, most areas. Wet weather over the central part of the Corn Belt, mainly dry or below normal precipitation elsewhere. And this pattern does look like it's going to be persistent through most of the rest of the month. And we're going to have to keep an eye on that central part of the nation because that does look like it could be several weeks or even longer of above normal precipitation. So I hope you have a great week as we get into the middle part of the month. And I will be providing some information, more extensive information on the harvest season outlook this week.